Have you been wanting to become more involved with AMSN?
Now is the time, as the AMSN call for volunteers is open.
Help shape the future of our association by volunteering on one of our committees or joining our pool of medical, surgical, nursing subject matter experts. 2 exciting opportunities to grow your leadership skills, connect with peers, and help shape the future of medical surgical nursing.
This year, we're especially excited to welcome new members to the podcast subcommittee, where you can serve as a co-host and help craft the stories and conversations that inspire our community.
Apply now at amsn.org.
Settle up with AMSN this fall by registering for the 2025 AMSN Convention happening September 11 through 13 in Austin, Texas.
You're in for 3 days of medical surgical excitement.
At the convention, you'll join hundreds of like-minded nurses at enriching educational sessions led by over 80 industry speakers, 11 different networking and meetup opportunities, and so much more.
Elevate your medical surgical practice by joining us in Austin for #AMSN 2025.
Register now at amsn.org/events/AMSN Convention.
On this episode of Med-Surg Moments,
My husband and I would just start maybe doing some home improvement projects.
I would say hire a professional.
We did a Six Flags run already because last fall they had. I remember saying that I was able to close the chapter on my thoughts of mother-baby unit, but they keep flowing. Our topic today is TV nurses versus real-life nurses.
I could not even get halfway through the second episode before I was like, this is trash. This surgeon.
Another thing aside from those looks is the exaggerating romances between nurses and doctors.
Every show does the romance. Fact versus fiction, there is romance on the unit.
There's no surgeon in the world that is going to go from an appendectomy to an open heart surgery in the same day.
I would say probably one of my guilty pleasure nurse-centric shows is...
It's so hilarious watching them draw labs.
This may be a hot take and an unpopular opinion, but
what everyone is talking about right now, the pit.
this is Mary Tess.
Sam.
Eric.
Marcella.
Kellye.
and Sydney. Welcome to Med-Surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
This podcast is an engaging look at the lives of and surrounding medical surgical nurses.
We're proud Med-Surg nurses just like you, sharing our stories, insights, and experiences to support you in your nursing journey. Our topic today is TV nurses versus real-life nurses. But before we get started, let's begin with some personal updates. Sydney, why don't you get us started?
So my most recent update, I just finished my third master's class, Advanced Pathophysiology. It actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. That was kind of the one I was dreading the most. But we did just a lot of case studies with a couple paragraphs about the patho and then some quizzes and stuff, obviously, on the textbook. But I'm taking a short break from classes. My fiance and I were traveling to Spain, actually back to where I came from, to visit some of my friends that are still working there. A lot of them leave Spain at the end of the year, so we figured this was a good opportunity to go visit everyone before we're all split up around the world again. So I didn't want to have to be worrying about schoolwork and assignments while we're there for, I think, 8 days this month. So taking a short break, but that's the nice thing about the classes that I'm taking are all 8 weeks. So I can just pick it right back up in August and I'm not really going to get that far behind. Plus, I'm just taking it one class at a time. So I'm not in a rush to get it done. But what about you, Sam? Any new updates?
Yeah, so things have been pretty smooth sailing at home, but things at work are picking up a little bit. We have been finalizing our magnet document to get turned in for accreditation consideration. I work at a place that has been a magnet organization for quite a long time. And so a lot of pressure, making sure we have all of our ducks in a row and that we'd be ready for site visit whenever ANCC is ready to come see us. So we've been working on that and then correcting some stuff with some regulatory findings. I know we've all kind of talked about some of those JCO, DNV all the things, and just good opportunities to get some stuff shored up and improve. So that's what we've been working on over here. Kellye, what's new with you?
Just since the kids are in summer camp, I have a couple of hours more free time. I guess I shouldn't say free time because lately I have been picking up an extra shift or two just to help train some new nurses. But for me, the downtime that I do get at home, my husband and I would just start maybe doing some home improvement projects around the house. I'm not too well when it comes to arts and crafts, but I do know some of the things I want to start doing, changing around the front yard and backyard. So look forward to talking to you all about some improvements around the house. If y'all have any advice.
I would say hire a professional. That's my stance on DIY house projects.
DIY projects. Well, thank you for that, Sam, because I may be doing that pretty soon. But other than that, work for me, it's just been making sure my new grad residents have what they need. Last year, we did a graduation for my one resident to complete her first year into the nurse residency. And then maybe in the next 2 weeks, onboarding 2 more new grad residents. So I'll be preparing and getting that going and ready for them. What about you, Marcella?
Summer vacation has started and it's actually off to a good start. We made like a bucket list and we keep it on the wall. So after these events, we get to check them off together and they get to hold me accountable. Like, Mom, we can't just stay in. We got to do this, 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 and this. We did a Six Flags run already because last fall they had deals on annual passes. And I'm so glad I made that decision last fall because now I don't have to second guess us packing all into a car and going because I'm like, oh, I already paid for it. So that was so fun. My teenager took a friend and they ran around on their own. And obviously we checked in. And then my little ones, we really focused on them and we took them on all the rides. Even my 1-year-old, he had a blast. So that was great. Also, there's like a free bowling program that we have. And it's pretty awesome because it's basically for the whole summer. You just walk in, you get 2 free games of bowling. So I took my 3 little ones, just me by myself, because my husband works Monday through Friday from home. That was not a good idea, going by myself and letting my little ones like handle bowling balls and me carrying a baby. So next time I'll take a helper. But they still had a blast. And now that we've got those passes, I'm like, you guys are going to be professionals by the end of the summer for sure. Work-wise, I remember saying that I was able to close the chapter on my thoughts of mother-baby unit, but they keep floating me there. They're like, you are now an honorary mother-baby nurse because they keep sending me over there. And I have a lot of personal experience with breastfeeding, and their lactation consultant was out over the weekend. They have less availability like on the weekends and holidays. And that's when I work. I work every weekend. That just works for me and my husband. So they let me help out with helping new moms, some of them 17-year-old first-time mom. It kind of takes me back. I was 19 when I had my daughter. So every time I go there, it's just so emotional because it just connects me back to my history and my family and my babies. So they're trying to convince me to get my lactation consulting certification. I like the idea. I like how it sounds. But, we talked about it when going back to school. I'm a little scared of going back for anything. But it is in the back of my mind. I'll think about it, but I'm loving Flow Pool right now. I don't know where I'm going to be, who I'm going to see. So that's what's going on. Only good things. All right. Well, why don't we move on to our topic? One that we've all been looking forward to. TV nurses versus real life nurses. When it comes to nurses on television, the drama is always high, hospital lighting is always low, which I love, and fiction is often stranger than the reality of our nursing lives. Who would like to get us started?
Let me tell y'all something. I've just started watching The Resident, binge watching The Resident. It's very good, but set aside the nurses and doctors being very well dressed. The makeup, the hair, the everything about these nurses and doctors on the resident. They just look good. They look too good to be nurses and doctors. So another thing aside from those looks is the exaggerating romances between nurses and doctors.
Every show does the romance.
Yes. That romance scene in the closet, Resident Pravesh. He's had his girlfriend and he would come and visit each other in the hospital. And I'm like, how did they end up in the closet? She's not even a worker. My husband's watching it with me. He's like, you did get home pretty late last night. Or something like that. And I'm like, don't you dare.
I haven't seen The Resident. Is it like a drama or?
The Resident is more like a drama. The main character, Conrad Hawkins, he's an awesome, phenomenal doctor. He just takes over everything. He has high medical expertise, easy on the eyes, but he has a rough side to him as well. He knows his stuff. He treats his residents, his new resident, which is Dr. Pravesh. He treats them very, very cold, but he's on top of everything, and they mature and later on end up having the best phenomenal relationship while all the hospital drama goes on. They're in surgeries. Dr. Bell is the CEO of the hospital. He's just perfect in everything, and it's just over-exaggerated, you guys. But
definitely the romances in like the on-call rooms, the doctors on-call rooms. I've seen that on like Grey's Anatomy. That's a classic. Fact versus fiction, there is romance on the units. I have seen nurses marry doctors. That one is confirmed true. I will say that. How about you guys?
I would say probably one of my guilty pleasure nurse-centric shows is Nurse Jackie. Not a great portrayal of what nurses are like.
She's not a role model.
Hey, guilty pleasures are allowed, okay? It kind of dives into when you're doing the checkoff with your colleague, like on narcotics and stuff. It just takes you into the what if there was someone, which in real life, it does happen. So it takes you into a deep dive of what that life would look like. And it's scary. I never watched the whole show, but to me, it's so scary, like the thought of accidentally ruining your life or just like getting into deep stuff like that. Tell me more about Nurse Jackie.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's so true because it does happen, unfortunately. So not totally unexpected to have a nurse that gets into that situation. But I feel like they do a great job of portraying the student nurse or a new grad nurse.
Zoe. I think she's a student and then she graduates at some point during the show.
I think you're right. She is hilarious. I feel like she is the best depiction of every student nurse not having a clue what's going on and just getting thrown to the deep end. And then you see her like get her feet under her and get more confident. I love that character. I think she's a great portrayal of the progression of nurses, and her interactions with Jackie is the epitome of nurse eating their young preceptor relationship. While Nurse Jackie is not a role model for nurses, I think that show does an exaggerated job of showing a pretty accurate nurse-preceptor relationship.
I definitely want to check that out. The one that I would say is definitely not accurate, but I loved watching it growing up. So I had no thoughts of being a nurse when I was growing up. That wasn't until after I gave birth to my daughter at 19. But my guilty pleasure coming home was House. And if you guys never watch House, the concept is that he's kind of like a bad boy doctor with chronic pain. So he's a little bit addicted to prescription drugs. Sprinkle of addiction, sprinkle of humor. He's got a team of residents that follow him around. And then every episode, he figures out what's going on with the patient. They're trying to figure it out in a very unconventional way. And hospital management is trying to stop him, but also they love that he can figure out the hardest cases. That one is so funny because, one, they purposely try to be funny. But in a medical standpoint, let me tell you, his team of doctors are always the ones drawing the labs, doing all the exams, every single MRI. They're like running the MRI machine. And they always end up going to the patient's house to investigate like the mold in their basement. When have you ever seen your doctor drive to your house and go through your closets and your kitchen? It's so hilarious watching them draw labs. That has never happened.
I have a similar beef with Grey's Anatomy, and this may be a hot take and an unpopular opinion, but I tried to watch it years ago after I had been a nurse. And, I know loosely some of the pieces of the storyline and whatever, but I started it from season 1, episode 1, the pilot, and I could not even get halfway through the second episode before I was like, this is trash. This surgeon did an appendectomy with all like the little residents, surgical residents, whatever. And then his next case was like an open heart, like bypass or something. And I was like, what is going on? There's no surgeon in the world that is going to go from an appendectomy to an open heart surgery in the same day. So I quit watching it from there. I could not go further.
Oh, you've got to suspend disbelief on these shows.
I could not. But I will say my favorite medical TV show is ER. One of the OGs, the classics. Carol Hathaway was like the most hardcore ED nurse ever. And I always felt like she was such a good advocate. And I love the way that they portray like the nurses talking with the patients and the families and managing all of like the social aspects, psychosocial needs of the patients. I think they do a really good job with that. But I remember watching it time and time again, and they're a big level 1 trauma center, right? And so I was like, man, I feel like I could probably like go through a trauma. Like after watching all this, like I could probably got it handled now. I've seen her do it enough times. We'll be good.
That's a good segue to what everyone is talking about right now, the pit. Of course, ER to the pit. I think I even saw a headline that ER is suing the pit, maybe because there's the same actor. I don't know what. I didn't get into the story, but people love the pit. And I watched some Dr. Mike videos about it. And he was going over it and he's like, this is a lot of accurate terminology, procedure, like what would happen in this ED situation. A lot of accurate stuff, but gory. I don't have a problem with gory. My husband does. I'm like, I really want to watch this so we can talk about it on the podcast. And we have to be so careful. Like the kids are running around. I'm like, okay, maybe we'll just watch this another time, because let me warn anybody who checks out the pit. It is gory. It's good stuff, but it's not for the faint of heart.
So Noah Wiley is the main actor in the pit.
Yeah.
He is also in ER. And I saw something that he was actually helping with advocacy of legislation for ED nurses and stuff. And he's like, I obviously don't do this work for real, but I've played it a lot and I've got to learn so much. And I think that's just such a cool way to use his platform in a way and help advocate for the specialty that he has represented for many, many years on TV.
I like that because sometimes I struggle with actors. Some of them have a little bit too much self-importance. And I'm like, you're not actually a surgeon, but he's advocating for us in real life. That's pretty awesome.
I was going to say, with their years of experience on these TV shows and the accuracy of the way they talk about the procedures and the way they do their meetings and things like that, I feel like they can almost perform in the real world on us just with the experience working on these TV shows sometimes. But we know that's not a thing. Another thing I was going to include talking about these TV shows is the amount of time that they have at the bedside. To me, that annoys me sometimes, because when I'm talking to my staff and we're talking about getting in and out the rooms, we have to talk to our patients. We use aided, introduce ourselves, and give the patients the reasons why we're in there. It's like the nurse and doctor stay in the room too long for my comfort level.
But they also still have time to have relationships in the on-call rooms. I want all their time. That's so much time.
Yes. So that's kind of a thing when I watch the TV shows. I know how long they're in these patients' rooms.
I have to give an honorable mention. This episode that I saw of this show is the most accurate I've ever seen. And it's so funny because I like to look at things from more of a humorous standpoint. The show is called Getting On. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. It was originally on British television, and then they made an American version. I never saw the American one, and I only saw a few episodes because there was just nowhere to stream it at the time. But the show is called Getting On, and I only saw the first episode, and it was the most accurate. Let me just give you a little scenario, a little snippet. It's more centered around the everyday absurdities as being a nurse on the unit. So I'll tell you just one part. The nurse walks into a room, and on a chair, there is a stool, a bowel movement, just sitting there. Yeah, you're already laughing. The episode is basically about that. Like, what do we call it? What do we do with it? And it's so funny because it centers around it and how all of a sudden the nurses have to figure out whose it is because, you can't just have an unassigned bowel movement sitting in a room and then who's going to clean it? Which staff is going to take care of it? And in real life, this happens between nurses and ancillary staff sometimes. Like, who's going to take care of this mess? And then they have to fill out documentation regarding the event. And then the doctor comes and they're like, well, how would you describe it? And then it's like a whole conversation about how are we going to document it? What does it look like? What are we going to do now? How are we going to dispose of it? Maybe we should save it. What do we have to do some tests on it? It's so funny. Like that's how it is on the unit. Everyone's trying to figure out what's the policy? What is the best practice? The doctors always refer to nurses. Well, you're in charge. You're going to know the policy better than me. But it's so funny. Like it just talks about the mundane aspects of being on the unit, things like that, like birthday party cake, like we got to hide it. Administration's coming, things like that. Not so much romance and drama. Or there's like a crazy patient that doesn't speak English and no one can figure out what she needs. And it was so hilarious. You guys should check it out. But back to doctors not knowing. How many times do doctors go into your patient's room and make them promises that we cannot keep? I like that a lot too. It's like, why did you tell the patient that we can do all of these things in under an hour? You walk out of there, you're gone, and now we have to page you anytime we need something, but it's on us to meet these amazing promises that we make to our patients.
I think that's one of those canon events. It just happens to everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
But you mentioned BBC, and I can't believe in my brainstorming, I didn't even think of Call the Midwife. I love Call the Midwife. It's like 1950s. So basically, they're in like a fairly poor area, and it's this house of nurse midwives, and there's some nuns there and some definitely non-nuns all there at Nanata's house. And there's one doctor. And he trusts them so much because they're obviously out there delivering a lot of babies, doing a lot of prenatal care, postnatal care, and all these things. And when they call, he knows what's going down. Like, I got to go. And I love the relationship that they show between the doctor and all the nurse midwives and stuff. And I think that is such a great show.
And I love the historical building that they put into it. When that medication came out that was supposed to be anti-nausea,
Nitrous.
Yep, they have nitrous and all the women are loving the nitrous. They talk about the social and religious issues concerning when birth control came out and who gets it and who doesn't and these unwed mothers.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about a lot of historical social issues in the context of midwifery. And I thought that was a really interesting way to work in what life and healthcare was back then. Even though it's obviously a dramatization, but they do a great job of portraying birth and labor and the complications, especially in an impoverished town. Midwives and the nuns are just taking care of these people the best they can with one doctor for this entire town.
I love the historical tie back to real life, and it's also terrifying. One day, the stories of what we're doing and the medicine they have in the future, maybe what we do now, it will look terrifying to somebody in the future. I watched the documentary on the nurse that was, what was it? They were contaminating saline bags. They made a movie about it.
With insulin, right?
Yes, absolutely. We watched the movie about this. I think there's like a Netflix movie and several documentaries. Those are terrifying. And sometimes I don't like them because just kind of like Nurse Jackie, because then other people watch it and then I don't want people to be afraid of me. But it's also good for people to stay aware of their care and keep an eye on their nurses and what they're up to. There are people in and out of patients' rooms constantly. And it's incredible to see how people kind of get blind to whoever's in and out of the room. So it's a little bit of education, a little bit of scaring the population, but some of the stories really did happen.
I don't think there's a lot of positive nonfiction nurse TV out there. So
the only positive nonfiction, I would say when I was growing up, I think it was TLC. It was actually in the operating room. Birth Stories. There was an emergency department one too. It's really just a documentary team. on the units. And you kind of get to see these like heartbreaking stories and
Yes.
triumph. Yeah, right.
That's what I really, really loved, how they show the lives of the patients before the surgeries, and then they go into the rooms when the surgeries actually happen, and then they kind of do follow-ups towards the end. And it was really, really more like a personalized experience. You went along with that patient.
The ones with the birth stories were so emotional, but not a focus on the nurses particularly.
I would say probably my favorite TV nurse, I think, would be Zoe. I already said that, but I think she's just a perfect portrayal of student nurse into new nurse. You really just see her confidence come alive, and she's so witty and she's so funny. And especially for an ER nurse, you really got to be sharp and on your toes and have a tough personality, but still be empathetic. I just think she's a great portrayal of a nurse on TV. My not so favorite would be Olivia from Grey's Anatomy, the one that Alex had a relationship with. They call her all kinds of mean names because there's some STDs going around on the unit because all the nurses and the doctors are sleeping together. That's Grey's Anatomy. But we don't really get too much into her nursing expertise on the show, but she wasn't very nice. She wasn't a great portrayal of nurses, getting with the doctors and then talking bad about them. And she wasn't focused on the work. You gotta focus on the work if you want to be a good TV nurse. Anyone else have a favorite or at least favorite nurse character?
I would say a standout to me, I don't know about favorite. The one hasn't come out for me yet, the one. But the show I used to love growing up was Scrubs. Scrubs was hilarious. One of their main characters was Carla. She's funny because it really is like that where the nurses sometimes bully the residents a little bit, especially if it's a seasoned nurse and a new doctor, like whether they're still studying or a resident. Even the attendings, they'll be like clowning them a little bit. And I like the pit because one of the first lines is, "That's the boss over there." And he pointed to the charge nurse in the ED. He's like, "Do whatever she says." So I like Carla because she's funny and she's got the quick comebacks. And it's funny too because sometimes she'll be speaking Spanish. And the pit got that too, where like the Filipino nurses are making fun of the doctors in Tagalog. So it's accurate because on the units, sometimes, especially if it's a team that gets to know each other, you do make jokes. And I know that sometimes patient population on social media, they're like, this is distasteful, because for patients in the hospital, it's the hardest time of their lives. Usually it's the hardest, darkest, scariest, with hopefully good outcomes. But I understand that us making jokes doesn't make sense to them because it's like, what are you doing? This is such a serious topic. But this is our everyday 9 to 5, in a sense, 7 to 7. Everybody's got to cope in their own way. In our own world, some of these things are funny. So I love Scrubs because they're able to do that. And they get a little serious sometimes too.
I think that's a great line about, "That's the boss over there." I think that's probably the best line that Grey's Anatomy has when Dr. Bailey goes, "Pissing off the nurses. Stupid."
Yeah, that's so true.
Well, for me, I really can say the actor that I loved the most in The Resident was definitely Conrad. He was just fearless. And actually, he wasn't a nurse, scratch that. He was a doctor, but he was just so for the nurses and so for Nick, who played his love interest. And Nick was a strong advocate for her patients as well as a nurse practitioner. She was assertive and empathetic through the whole entire show. I really loved that pair. And the least favorite for me was the neurosurgeon in there. He's great as an actor. He's actually Morris Chestnut. I love him as an actor, but him playing the role of Dr. Barrett in the TV show The Resident, he was very arrogant. He was a neurosurgeon and no one could tell him anything, but he was very smart. He was very on point with all his medical diagnosis and his surgeries. So he was the go-to for everyone in that show as far as neurosurgeons. But his attitude towards people, he was very cold-hearted. And I think later as the show goes on, I don't want to talk about it and reveal some things that if viewers have not watched it, but I will say he gives his background and his personal story later on to reveal why he's so cold-hearted. You know, it's always a story behind a story, but just the character that he played was very, very mean and cold-hearted.
I would say my favorite TV nurse is Carol from ER. the OG to me. She's super level-headed. She's wicked smart. She runs that ED better than anybody else. And she gets to marry George Clooney. I mean, they get married, or at least they're together. So good for her on that end. I think.
Is she the one with the big curly hair?
Yes.
Oh, she's gorgeous. Yeah, I like her too.
Yeah, she's fabulous. And then I would say my least favorite, since we talked about Call the Midwife, Sister Evangelina. She, I just feel like, is one of those really strong personalities. And of course, we know her heart is in the right place, but it just makes her unapproachable. She's not super great at giving or receiving feedback, and just is not good for building confidence in the new midwives that join Donata's house. So I'm going to have to give a little dig to Sister Evangelina.
Well, believe it or not, we're out of time. To our listeners, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
We look forward to connecting with you on the next episode of Med-Surg Moments, the AMSN podcast.
In the meantime, we encourage you to subscribe to Med-Surg Moments wherever you listen to podcasts.
To reach us, use hashtag MedSurg Moments on your social posts.
Or send us an email at amsnpod@amsn.org. That's amsnpod@amsn.org.
We are all AMSN members, and if you love Med-Surg Moments, we invite you to become a member of AMSN. You can learn more at www.amsn.org.
Finally, the content within the Med-Surg Moments podcast represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the co-hosts and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, and opinions of the Academy of Medical Surgical Nurses.
Until next time, this is Eric,
Mary Tess,
Sam,
Kellye,
Marcella.
And Sydney. And always remember, Med-Surg Moments is a moment in our lives and a moment in our Med-Surg careers that makes a huge difference.